Hello, Internet. In a previous video, I was talking about a couple of my favorite books, right? The Art of Readable Code, which I had to show you an artist's rendition of because I don't have a physical copy. And I think I mentioned at the time that I don't have physical copies of many books. I don't buy physical copies much anymore. But that I did have, I don't remember if I mentioned this explicitly, but anyway, the most recent book I read, I think I alluded to this, is a book called Accelerate, The Science of Lean Software and DevOps. Sorry, I had to look over at the full title. Unfortunately, I don't have the physical, I couldn't find it. I know it exists somewhere, and if you look, I went through, like, I'm still unpacking, right? So I unpacked tons and tons of books. There's more underneath, but I just couldn't find my copy of the book. But I did find a copy of another book that I love that is a little bit related. So again, I'm now talking about two things. So let's pick one and switch to the other. So let's pick this one. You Are Not So Smart. This is one of my absolute favorite books. It is a book of. It's structured like this. You have you'll see he'll start with a misconception, right? So this is about introspection, the misconception. You know why you like the things you like and feel the things that you feel. And the truth, based on, a bunch of research and experiments, is the origin of certain emotional states is unavailable to you. And when pressed to explain them, you will make something up. The brain is really good at making things up, it turns out, in a lot of contexts. I feel like a lot of these things kind of repeat to that one. That one isn't actually related to what I want to talk about. This one, though, is procrastination with the, I'll just summarize, but the myth is that there's a thing, willpower is just like a thing. It's like, oh, I'm lazy, I'm just not a good person. And really what the problem is, like, no, willpower isn't what we think it is. So let me just demonstrate by talking about one of the fun experiments. I'm just going to close this book, but again, this is a really cool book. And he had a fun podcast that introduced me to the genre of electro swing. So many good things came from reading this book. So the experiment is one where they put a bunch of like treats in front of kids, and they're like, "Yo, kids, here are all these treats. But if you just don't eat any of these treats for a few minutes, you can have double the treats later." And predictably, you can probably see where this is going. Many kids are very bad, and they eat the treats immediately. The kids that don't eat the treats immediately, it isn't that they stare at them and are just better at resisting. It's that they would hide them from their view. And if you read the truth, I think that he mentions it's more about thinking, realizing how you're going to think, and then kind of working around that. So what having a good willpower really is acknowledging that you can't, acknowledging your restrictions. I'm a human and I'm going to be tempted by things, so let's just remove that temptation from me. It's working around the limitations of a person. Before, so this does connect to Accelerate, the book. I'm getting there, but I apply this to my life. I think one of the coolest things about this book is there were so many things in here I thought, ooh, I can apply that to my life. Things about, like, you get hangry, you make worse decisions when you're hungry, and it turns out that other people do too, right? And if you want those people, if those people are going to make important decisions that might affect you, it's probably better if they have eaten more recently, that they're not hangry. Makes sense to say it in retrospect, but just not something I thought about. So the one about willpower kind of ties into this other idea I've had for a long time. That is repeated in many ways, in many different forms. That's one of them, and it's expressed in Accelerate as well. Is that people are only as good as the systems you put them in, right? Like, and that's kind of this food example with the snacks. That's like a tiny example and a very personal, small scale example, right? And if I wanted to apply that to myself, if I know that I love candy and I'll eat a lot of candy and my teeth hate me for it. But if I go to the grocery store, then, right, the best way to not eat a bunch of candy is just don't have it in the house, right? Keep it farther away from me. Same as the kids, right? Just have it removed. Or if I'm going to eat some candy, portion a little bit out to a bowl and bring it to me, because the fact that it's all the way in the kitchen, that's just enough resistance to prevent me from grabbing more, right? So that's like a small scale example. Then you go to big scale examples, like, why do we have governments and countries? Is like, either they're not perfect systems, but the ideal, the hope is that by having these things, you create systems in which people are free to be as best as they can be. And of course, it doesn't work perfectly because human, all these things are complicated. But that's the goal that those things are starting. That's why we have them, right? No one would have organized these things if they didn't have a value, even if maybe, again, problems. So Accelerate, kind of in the middle, is the whole premise of that book is how do you organize a company in order to make software good and to make good software. And like You Are Not So Smart, it is based on experiments. In the case of Accelerate, it was, I think, 4 or 5 years of interviewing and observing multiple companies and seeing, okay, among the ones that are producing really high quality software and doing it quickly and making money as a result, because that's what companies want to do. They want to make money. So we would, and this is a book about how do you make an effective company. Capitalism, pros and cons. But if that's what you want, if you want your company to be successful, and many people and companies do want their companies to be successful, then here's what you would do. And if you want your company to be very unsuccessful, no one wants that. Here's what you would do, right? So more like, let's flip this around. You don't want to be an unsuccessful company, so don't do the things that the unsuccessful companies do, and do the things that the successful companies do. In terms of software, and this book was specifically about developing good software. And a really cool book. Again, and that one is harder to apply to my personal life. Like, so I think You Are Not So Smart, I can do these things, right? And apply these things to my daily life directly. Governments, I'm not aiming to become president or something, so I can't have influence there. Companies, ooh, interesting. That's a little more attainable for me, right? That's a scale that I could push and try to push things in those kinds of directions. So anyway, that's a fantastic book. I would very recommend it. One of the things that I thought was really interesting in terms of, like, if you want to go back to the formula of misconception and the truth, one of the misconceptions they address really fast in the book Accelerate is that if you make software quickly, you're going to have more bugs. But what they found is that actually when companies are organized such that they can produce software very quickly, they actually end up with less buggy software and or software that when there is a bug, it's very easy to recover. So really the total amount of time that you have bugs live is reduced. And I think they found it actually you get less bugs just to begin with also by having practices that just allow people to move quickly. So right, in a lot of senses you say, well, speed means I'll do things worse, but they found that in a lot of cases, in most cases, speed equals better, which Accelerate. So anyway, that was a very cool book in terms of software. This is just a very cool book in terms of psychology, I think. Ooh, one caveat for this book. Since it was published, there was a crisis in psychology. A lot of experiments, people were having trouble reproducing, and that affected some of this book talks about some of those studies that since then people have had trouble reproducing. So I would double check any of those things. The willpower one, I don't remember specifically if that was one that people were having trouble reproducing. Sorry, you may have just heard my phone buzz there. It's on the table, as is a laptop, and sound travels. Anyway, the willpower example, I think, at least it's working. I feel like that seems like so applicable and ties again into the same idea that you just see everywhere, is that it's about having a good system, and whether that's a system you impose on yourself or elsewhere, or that you go to a place that has systems that you like. I think that one probably is still good. But anyway, as you flip through these books and before you take them too seriously and apply them to your personal life, maybe just double check that the research has held out over the years. So anyway, cool books, and that's it.